You are alone in a room. You are reading or working or just sitting in the quiet, and then, with no warning at all, you feel it. The unmistakable sense that someone is behind you. Not a sound, not a movement, just a certainty pressing on the back of your neck. You turn around. No one is there. You have felt this. Everyone has. The prickle on the back of the neck, the sudden conviction that you are not alone, the head that turns before you even decide to turn it. And the easy explanations are all wrong. It is not your imagination. It is not simple paranoia. And it is certainly not a ghost. It is one of the oldest and most precise survival systems you own, doing exactly the job it was built to do. And here is the part that should keep you watching all the way to the end. Scientists have learned to switch this feeling on, deliberately. In a laboratory, they can summon that presence behind you on command, make you feel watched by something that is provably not there. And they have done it over and over again. What they discovered when they did it reveals exactly what has been standing behind you in the dark your whole life. Hold on to that question, because everything builds toward it. First, you have to understand what your eyes are actually doing when they are not even pointed at something. You think of your vision as a camera aimed straight ahead, but the truth is that the edges of your sight, your peripheral vision, are running their own quiet operation. They are blurry and colorless and almost useless for detail, but they are exquisitely tuned for two things: movement and faces, especially faces that are turned toward you. Your brain dedicates enormous resources to one specific question, asked constantly, below your awareness. Is something looking at me right now? You are astonishingly good at answering it. Studies of gaze detection show that you can sense a direct stare from the very corner of your eye, in a crowd, in a fraction of a second. There are populations of cells in your brain, in a region called the superior temporal sulcus, that fire specifically in response to eyes pointed in your direction. A face looking just slightly to the side does not trigger them. A face locked onto you does. You have a dedicated alarm for being watched, and it never sleeps. Part of why you are so good at this is written right into the human eye itself. You are the only primate on the planet with a large, bright white area surrounding your iris. Every other ape has dark eyes that hide where they are looking. Yours broadcast it. Researchers who study this believe those white eyes evolved so that we could read one another's gaze with ease, follow a glance, share attention, and cooperate in ways no other animal can. But the same feature that lets you read everyone else also lets them read you. It sharpened a gaze detection system to a razor's edge, one that now lights up even when the eyes it senses are not really there at all. So why would your brain build something so sensitive that it goes off in an empty room? Why would it rather be wrong than quiet? To answer that, you have to leave the modern room behind and go back hundreds of thousands of years to the world this system was actually built for. And this is where it stops being a quirk and starts being the reason you are alive. Picture one of your ancestors, alone at the edge of a forest at dusk. The grass shifts. Somewhere in the dark, something moves. Now that ancestor has two possible mistakes available. The first mistake is to assume a predator is there when it is only the wind. The cost of that mistake is small. A jolt of fear, a wasted sprint, a moment of looking foolish in front of no one. The second mistake is to assume it is only the wind when a predator really is there. The cost of that mistake is everything. You are eaten, you leave no children, your line ends. When the two errors are that lopsided, evolution does not aim for accuracy. It aims for survival. It builds a brain that would rather be startled 1,000 times for nothing than be calm even once at the wrong moment. A cognitive scientist named Justin Barrett gave this system a name. He called it the hyperactive agency detection device. The idea, which builds on earlier work by the anthropologist Stuart Guthrie, is simple and a little unsettling. Your mind is wired to detect agents, living things with intentions, everywhere, on a hair trigger, and to err massively on the side of seeing one when there is nothing. A rustle becomes a stalker. A shadow becomes a face. A creak in an empty house becomes a presence. You are not malfunctioning when this happens. You are running ancient life-saving software in a world it was never designed for. And it gets stranger because this alarm does not wait for your conscious mind to weigh in. Think about the order of what happens when you feel watched. The fear comes first. The neck prickles, the body tenses, the head begins to turn, and only then, a beat later, does the thinking part of you arrive to ask what is going on. That order is not an accident. Deep in your brain sits a small, almond-shaped structure called the amygdala, your threat detector. It receives a fast, crude stream of visual information on a shortcut that bypasses your conscious vision entirely. It can register a pair of eyes aimed at you, or a face in the shadows, and fire the alarm before you have consciously seen anything at all. Your body knows it is being watched before you do. The feeling arrives first, and the explanation scrambles to catch up. If a system this old and this automatic is quietly shaping what you feel in a dark room, it is worth asking what else it is doing to you when you are not looking. That is exactly the kind of hidden machinery this channel exists to pull into the light, so if that idea grips you, subscribe, and the next one will find you. Now, back to the dark room, because we still have not answered the biggest question. What is actually standing behind you? For most of history, the honest answer was a shrug, or a story about spirits. Some people still insist the feeling is supernatural, that you can detect a stare with no physical cue at all, a kind of sixth sense. But when researchers tested that careful claim directly, it collapsed. You cannot feel a stare through a wall. You cannot sense eyes on the back of your head with no information reaching you. What feels like telepathy is always, when you trace it, your senses catching something real and faint, a reflection, a sound, a shift of shadow at the blurry edge of your vision and handing it up to your brain, which dresses it up as a certainty. The magic was never magic. It was your own perception, working below the waterline of awareness. But that still leaves the strangest cases. The presence felt in total darkness, the figure sensed in a silent room with no reflection and no sound. For those, the answer did not arrive until scientists found a way to build the ghost themselves. This is the moment everything has been pointing to. In a laboratory in Switzerland, a neuroscientist named Olaf Blanke set out to do something that sounds impossible. He wanted to make a healthy person, fully awake, feel the unmistakable presence of someone standing behind them when absolutely no one was there. And he succeeded. His team built a simple robotic setup. A blindfolded person reached out and moved a lever in front of them, and behind their back, a robotic arm reproduced that exact movement, touching them on the back in perfect time with their own hand. When the touch on the back matched their movement precisely, nothing strange happened. The brain understood. That is me. But then the researchers added a tiny delay. The touch on the back now came a fraction of a second after the person moved their own hand. And in that small mismatch, something extraordinary happened. The participants suddenly felt that someone else was in the room, standing close, behind them. Some were so overwhelmed by the presence of this non-existent stranger that they asked to stop the experiment. Sit with what that means. There was no one there. There was only the person's own movement, fed back to their body slightly out of sync. Their brain took a signal it could no longer recognize as itself, and it did the most ancient thing it knows how to do. It assumed an agent. It conjured another person to explain the feeling, because a hidden someone is exactly what that circuitry was built to suspect. Blanca had not summoned a spirit. He had revealed the machine that builds them, and that is the answer to the question you have carried since the first second of this video. The presence you feel behind you in the dark is real, but it does not live in the room. It lives in you. It is what happens when your threat detection system, your gaze-sensing edges, and your agent-hungry brain are left alone in the quiet with too little information and far too much caution. They do what they have always done. They fill the silence with a watcher. They would rather invent a stranger than risk missing a real one. So look again at that ordinary, frightening moment. Alone in a room, certain that someone is behind you. You are not broken and you are not haunted. You are carrying a guardian that is hundreds of thousands of years old, one that stood between your ancestors and the things waiting in the dark and saved them so many times that you exist to feel it now. In a safe, empty, modern room, that guardian has nothing left to protect you from. So every so often, with no predator to find, it turns its ancient gaze on an empty doorway and whispers that someone is there. You are alone in a room, and you feel someone behind you. You turn, and no one is there. Now you know the truth. Someone really was watching over you. It was the oldest part of your own mind, still standing guard over a world that stopped being dangerous long ago. And if the idea that your brain quietly invents a presence unsettles you, then you should know it invents something far closer to home every single second you are awake. There is a voice in your head you call yourself, and it may not be what you think it is. Go find out who is really talking.